Francesca Pozzi. I am researcher at the Institute for Educational Technology of the Italian National Council for Research, and I am member of ASLERD association. I am honored to chair this session, which is devoted to a crucial topic, I think. That is how we expect the smart learning ecosystem to develop beyond 2030. So that is beyond the year indicated by UNESCO to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. As it will be explained in a minute, the debate starts from a document which is called the Timisoara Declaration. This declaration was an attempt to put forward the principle that should guide research in the field of smart learning ecosystems. This declaration was launched and promoted in 2016 by ASLERD and was assigned by many stakeholders at European level operating in the field. So now 7 years have passed from the signature of the declaration, and the association feels the need to update this declaration, okay? Because many things have changed meanwhile. And so this debate is conceived as a sort of discussion forum where different panelists from different associations operating in the field throughout the world will bring different perspectives on the declaration itself. Of course, we hope that this will trigger a discussion also within the audience. And we hope that this will allow us to collect feedback and inputs to update and improve the declaration. So we have conceived this debate as a sort of structured discussion. So there will be, in a few moments, there will be an introduction to the Timisoara Declaration. Then we will have a first round from the panelists where they will be asked to detect the strong points and weaknesses of the declaration as it is currently. Then there will be a second round where the panelists will be asked to give their vision on the future, and they will be asked to detect new opportunities and challenges for the future. And then there will be an open discussion with, we hope, with the inputs also from the audience, and we will conclude. So approximately the debate should last about a couple of hours. So the panelist was supposed to be composed of 4 people, who I'm going to introduce in a few moments. Blazenka, Divjak. I apologize from the very beginning because I will mispronounce the names. Then another panelist is Maria Mercedes Rodrigo, but I do not see her connected, so I'm not sure she will join at this point. I will text her briefly just to understand if there is any problem. Then we will have Lung-Hsiang Wong and Beverly Park Woolf. So I'm going to say a few words about our panelists, but before doing so, I'd like to introduce also Professor Gabriella Dodero, who will give the introduction to the Declaration of Timisoara. She's member of the ASLERD board, and she was former professor at the Free University of Pozzi. So let's come to our panelists. Professor Blazenka Divjak is full professor of mathematics and information science at the University of Zagreb, Faculty of Organization and Informatics. Her area of interest and expertise includes curriculum development, e-learning, learning design, assessment, and learning analytics, and also artificial intelligence in education. She is currently a member of the executive committee of the Society for Learning Analytics Research, also known as SLERD, and the advisory board of the Global Research Alliance for Artificial Intelligence in Learning and Education. I will skip the introduction of Maria Mercedes as I do not see her, but I will introduce her in case she shows up. So then we will have Dr. Lung-Hsiang Wong. He is a senior education research scientist and co-program director of learning sciences and innovation at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. His research interests includes mobile learning, seamless learning, computer-supported collaborative learning, computer-assisted language learning, artificial intelligence education, and teachers' professional development. He is former president of the Asia Pacific Society for Computers in Education, and he is member of the Global Chinese Society for Computers in Education. And then we have also the pleasure to have Beverly Park Woolf. She's a research professor in the College of Information and Computer Sciences, University of Massachusetts Amherst. She develops intelligent tutors that model a student's affective and cognitive characteristics and combine an analysis of learning with artificial intelligence, network technology, and multimedia. She's a fellow of the American Association of Artificial Intelligence and of ACM's Learning at Scale. So as you can see, we have a very panelists with a very diverse provenience, at least as far as geographical coverage is concerned. And I think this will bring many different inputs. I hope it will be an interesting discussion. So I want to thank the panelists for their availability to be here today. And I would leave the floor to Gabriella for introducing the declaration of Timisoara. So Gabriella, the floor is yours.
Francesca, I am now sharing my screen because what I would like to show you is a quick presentation about the Timisoara Declaration. So the 8 sections in which the declaration is divided is an introduction. Then there is a section on smart learning ecosystem for regional development. But I can scroll. So the introduction starts from the consideration that new generations are not anymore attracted to traditional educational models. But what is probably even worse is that employers do not consider students getting out from school as immediately employable. This means that bad times are ahead unless new educational models are put into practice and new learning environments, new learning ecosystem can support them. So the title of the association is Smart Learning Ecosystem for Regional Development, but in this particular instance of the declaration, a second point is put forward, that is social innovation. So regional development from the point of view of social innovation. And why is this put forward? Because since schools are part of every territory, much more than universities or other agencies, they should become innovation agencies for the respective territory. Every small area, every small city has a school, and that is where the local point of innovation should start. From the other hand, if you think about 2016, there was quite a lot of discussion about smartness, smart grid, smart devices. What this association and this declaration concentrates upon is smart people, how to get a territory populated by smart people and having them behave in a smart way. So the revision of the educational environments is aiming at achieving this smartness, which has to be intended in smart people. Now, how is this achieved? By promoting new literacies, by giving them and forcing them at school. And especially, we underline the importance of design literacy, because the purpose of design literacy is to help people solving complex problems, not well-specified problems, ambiguous problems, the problems that arise in complex societies like today's. And the importance of digital literacy is a way to support design literacy rather than a goal in itself. So the idea is to retrain, first of all, what are school actors, from teachers to students and other people, technicians, principals involved in the school world, and redesign what are the steps that the school is traditionally undertaking, the way school is giving monitoring, evaluation, and assessment of learning. So, at the time in Italy, there was a big debate about how this communication between a territory and the schools might be achieved. And one way which was gaining popularity was to use the students as ambassadors between the school and the territory while they are still in schools. That is, foreseeing internship and placement opportunities within the territory to communicate and to get to the territory a better understanding of what is the school achieving, and to the school, to the pupils, a better understanding of what can be the needs of the local territory. And this way, the students are supposed to acquire a project-oriented mindset, given that they are not operating in the well-known school environment, but within a company or an institution of the territory. This brings to a new technology transfer model, for example, including a model of the local community within the well-known triple helix technology transfer model. And the idea is supported by opening up education, by giving, for example, open access to digital resources. We may be able to widen the current digital gap between those who have the knowledge and those who have not. And at the same time, the digital resources being open access make it possible to achieve scalable education, training entire communities in the same time. From the point of view of the technology, the availability of smart machines may support this broader goal, especially if the technology is interoperable, so that with the goal of achieving people smartness, smart machines will support them. But what is more important is that each smart environment is made interoperable so that any technology can be seamlessly used in learning. And if you can recall what was the big hype of 7 years ago, there was a big discussion on big data. How many problems would be solved by big data? Well, the idea of smartness that this ASLERD declaration was enforcing was that of concentrating on smart data rather than big data. So among so many data collected within the big data buzzword, let's find what are the digital traces that make sense for our educational goals. And to filter out smart data, we need data literacy, not as let's say, a goal by itself, but as the means to achieve smartness of the data. The needs for new tools shows in how to become data literate and how to understand the purpose of data. But data literacy, being confronted with big data, must be based on awareness of privacy and security concerns about what are the digital traces left, maybe without understanding, within the big world of the big data. So the conclusion is that as opposed to just waiting, scientists should become proactive and spread an understanding and support the creation of smart learning ecosystem, the achieving of smartness in people. Actually, this is not an opportunity for action or for publishing more paper, let's say, in the academic perspective. It is a duty to act. Otherwise, we will not be able to achieve better learning for a better world, which was the final statement of the declaration. And as Francesca was pointing out before, what comes next is we as ASLERD members wonder if a reformulation of the declaration is needed. And if so, what points can be dropped? What are they no longer needed? What are they almost solved, or at least not more interesting for the majority of us? And what new issues should be added? And I can conclude only by asking for your help, which is especially welcome.
Thank you very much, Gabriella. I think this presentation lays the basis for our discussion. In the meanwhile, I see Maria Mercedes has joined. I will give you a short presentation of Maria Mercedes because I have introduced very briefly the other three panelists. So let me introduce you Professor Maria Mercedes Rodrigo. She is full professor at the Department of Information Systems and Computer Science at the Ateneo de Manila University. Her areas of specialization are artificial intelligence in education, games and learning analytics. In 2021, she received the Distinguished Researcher Award from the Asia Pacific Society for Computers in Education, and she is member of the Asia Pacific Society for Computers in Education. So at this point, I would start the first round. As I mentioned before, during this first round, the panelists are asked to identify strong points and weaknesses of the declaration. So what in their view is still valid, what should be added or should be changed or removed. I will give 10 minutes for each panelist. So, and if you agree, I will start with Blazenka, and then Maria Mercedes, and then Lung-Hsiang, and then Beverly, if no one objects to this order. So please, Blazenka, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much for inviting me and giving me opportunity also to be here with you, because I think it is a really good opportunity, wonderful opportunity to exchange. As you heard before from Francesca, I'm representative here of SLERD, so Society of Learning Analytics Research, but I'm a professor at the University of Zagreb, mathematician, and also I'm working in IT area as well, and I'm especially concerned about all this situation about AI in education as well. So let me just share with you 2 slides to give you opportunity to actually see or better connect with what I'm telling you in the next couple of minutes. So, of course, the Temeshwara Declaration is still very relevant, so we can start with that. But in the meantime, in the last couple of years, since 2016, huge disruptions of schooling, education, training have been in place. Yeah, starting with pandemic, then wars, migrations, natural disasters, climate change. So a lot of new stuff. Unfortunately, not very much in favor of education has been developed. And also we were forced to have kind of emergency responses, so shift to digital learning and teaching because of all these, let's say, disruptions. But also we witnessed, especially in the last couple of months, rapid development of AI, and a lot of talk about it, not just in among educators, but also politicians and normal people on the streets. No? So it's not just something exclusively for education, but also what we can see right now, there are quite many implications for education. And also a new generations of children and young people with a different perspectives, different interests, and also span of attentions as well. So they probably, most of them, wouldn't be able to comprehend this, let's say, 2-hour debate right now, too long, and probably too actually they needed much more, let's say, interesting inputs all the time. And then, of course, from the industry and new demand for jobs and skills. And we are here a little bit, let's say, confused. And for that, I would like to propose that we look at the so-called Kuhn-Levin framework for decision making. You can see the this matrix on the right hand side here on the slide. So when we talk about domain of decision making, usually in everyday life we are dealing all the time with simple situation where we have unquestioned decisions, then common understanding about something, some stable situation and so on. But of course they can be complicated. Some areas that we have various options, several right answers, not just one, and then need for expertise as well. And in higher education and research and education in general, we have a lot of complicated situations. But of course, there are nowadays many complex but even chaotic situations. So complex situation means that the right answers cannot be identified and that solutions and patterns need to be emerged. So we are now actually dealing with a complex situation, and sometimes like during the COVID-19 pandemic, we were in chaotic situations. So no patterns and need to react immediately and set up order, even though most of us haven't been actually, it was a situation without not just answers to the questions, but also we don't know what we don't know. So it was very difficult, and there's a reason I usually said it was unknowns situations. And then at that time, in the first half of 2020, I was a different position. I wasn't a researcher, but I was the Minister of Science and Education of the Republic of Croatia. But at the same time, I was chairing the Council of Educational Minister of EU. So it was for the first time I witnessed how important cooperation among countries, ministries, and societies and communities are. So it was, let's say that a very important moment for the, I would say, not just EU, but the global community and education, that we experience how important it is to co-create, work together. And then after I was then back at in the second half of 2020 to my researcher and higher education teacher role. And then I look back and try with my one of my PhD students to analyze the situation, how it was in schools and education the first half. So when this first wave of pandemic was actually hitting the whole world, and then Of course, it was obvious that, and we expected that it would be like that. Digital readiness of the institutions, schools, people had been very important. But at the same time, we realized that education systems fit for change were not only those ranking highest on various parameters related to digital capacity, but this importance of agility of the system, so adaptiveness to change, reforms underway, capacity to reach and react in case of need. So there are a lot of other factors, and we call it fit for change, that we should highlight it and express. And that is something that I would really like to see much more in several declarations, and especially in Temishwara declaration. On this slide, and this is my second and the last slide for this first part, I try to point out the strong points what Temishwara declaration should keep, like smart ecosystem, smart people, as Gabriella said. It is very important. It's about people. It's not about systems. It's not just about technology. It is about people, and we should keep this smart people in the center of it. Then school as hubs, so co-creation principle. I hope that I emphasize that, how important it was during pandemic, the first part of pandemic, to co-create and collaborate together. Then training and retraining of educators on all levels is crucial. Then discourage technological laziness. Like, I don't understand this ChatGPT, so I put it aside. So I'm not going to interfere with the ChatGPT in my teaching and learning and my classes. So it is something that we should avoid. And it is very important that we keep this strong emphasis on that. Then social inclusion and cohesion, territorial development, and so on, but also this community factor in a triple helix. Of course, this design literacy is very much in line with the Kunevin framework when I emphasize this complex problem solving, and Gabriella also mentioned that in the first part, and data literacy. Of course, we are not going to go back to the physical space anymore totally. That's out of question. So we should be aware of that. And then that open access to digital resources are very, very important. But nowadays we are witnessing the opposite reactions, the opposite development, like that even massive open online courses nowadays, for most of them, you should pay. So business model, it is has been changed, but not in the right direction. Then a fully interoperable tech sphere and so on. But it is what is really important, that we keep this smart people centeredness and the school for better life as an approach. But there are some weaknesses, or we should stress more. Yeah, digital readiness of institutions and systems, this fitness for change. Then future literacy, so that there is no one future. There are different futures, and we are here to develop paths and visions of future. So among all these literacies, I would add also this future and AI literacy. Then that political decisions and call for actions for teachers. So responsibility of all stakeholders, but to be very clear that in schools, we should think about teachers as a cornerstones for a quality of education. So it means that no machine should be there to replace the teacher. Teacher is the human teacher is something we should keep, and we should be very clear about it. Then AI, of course, there's not just data protection, but also think about biased decision-making because of biased data, biased algorithms. That should be strongly emphasized. So ethical consideration, but also legal regulation. I know that in EU, we have probably a little bit different approach because in front of us is the adoption of AI Act And I think it is really important that we should put in focus that decision-making about people should be in hands of people, not only in the hands of machines or some automatic processes. And of course, learning analytics, we can benefit from, because this is not just to collect digital footprints, but also to analyze and present reliable insights about learning and learners. It is primarily focused for educators, students, and young people. So this kind of an informed learner-directed learning design. So it's not just for using data because we have data, but we use data and we try to make it to use it in a reliable and ethical manner. So all this support to creativity of students and educators, technology is here to be used, not to be misused, and we should take care about it. And the rising understanding in society of why we need this creative, inclusive education with the support of technology, not just for technology. So I think that I covered most of what I would like to.
Thank you very much, Blazenka. Very interesting. I think you have already provided a lot of inputs. So I would leave the floor directly to Maria Mercedes for her contribution.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I didn't prepare PowerPoint slides so I some of the points and I tried to limit the number of points that I wanted to make because I was worried that I would go over time. So so some of the what I'm going to say was were actually already mentioned by Blazenka. One of the strong points, I think, of the declaration is that there was an acknowledgement of the need to retrain teachers, professors, education managers, and technicians. And I'm coming from a developing world context, so I'm from the Philippines, and what we noticed is that in our classrooms, technology use is still extremely teacher-centered. So what usually happens is that a teacher is in front of the classroom with a computer and a projector, and yes, they're using technology, but it's really still the teacher who is leading the discussion and directing what the students should pay attention to. This is understandable because of the circumstances. We're in a low resource environment, so schools don't have, a lot of schools don't have enough classrooms. We definitely don't have enough teachers. And so to make the most out of what they have, schools really resort to this very teacher-centric approach. Now, the tricky thing about AI-based technologies is that it really demands a shift in the balance of power in the classroom. Students need to be given time to explore, to experiment, to do some, to pursue like open-ended questions, and but this requires a lot of confidence on the part of the teacher, and as well as a lot of time, which might not fit well with things like the curriculum that we're used to, which is quite stepwise, and academic time budgets. So usually there's a certain number of hours or sessions that are devoted to particular topics, after which you have to move on. But I think that with proper teacher training, it might be possible to at least move into a direction away from teacher-centeredness and into something a little more mixed, where maybe you have more opportunities for students to do something exploratory and, you know, to try to build on their own learning. Another strong point which came out in the declaration was the emphasis on monitoring, assessment, and evaluation. And I thought this was very important because many times the way we look upon educational systems is very inputs oriented. A lot of the reports that we see have to do with how much is put into a system. So how many dollars or euros or pesos in our case are put into things like teacher professional development or acquisition of computers or textbooks or whatever it is. But actually, there's less emphasis on what happens to these resources, even when it comes to things like donations from civil society or from corporations or non-government organizations. There's an emphasis on just putting the stuff in without really monitoring how this changes or this moves the needle in terms of learning. So ultimately, what we want is for our interventions to affect students in a positive way. And this impact really has to be measured. It also has to be weighed against expenses. So if there's a lot of excitement now on things like virtual reality and augmented reality, but these technologies are actually, well, the virtual reality in particular demands quite a lot of equipment and capital expenditure. And we're not really sure that the amount of learning that we're going to get out of it is commensurate to what we're going to spend. So, and there are right ways of doing virtual reality and augmented reality, and finding that that appropriate use, that sweet spot, I think requires a lot more thought. And part of what will contribute to that thought is more monitoring, more assessment, more evaluation. Evaluation in terms of the bottom line, which is of course the student learning and learning experience. The last thing I wanted to say was about the weakness. When I was reading the declaration, it's extremely Eurocentric, and I say that as I said, as somebody coming from the Philippines and from a developing country. And I had to kind of wonder to myself whether this was something that whether we should even address at this point. Maybe that wasn't maybe the declaration was not intended for all countries, to speak for all countries, but rather just for Europe. So my main observation was that the developing world and the developing world contexts aren't really factored in. But maybe this really wasn't the point, so I won't dwell on it so much. And that's really all I prepared, and so I'm happy to give the floor back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Mercedes. I think you also gave a very interesting contribution, and I think you're right. I mean, when you talk about the declaration being Eurocentric, as at least this was the way it was born, but now the attempt is to widen a bit the scope of the declaration, and this is why we have organized this debate with a contribution also by people who are not European. So thank you very much for pointing this out. I hope we will be able to, to capture all your inputs. So at this point, I will give the floor to Lung-Hsiang for his contribution. I guess he has got some slide. Yes, he's sharing. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I think what I'm going to say is probably not exactly answering this part of the questions, because instead I'm going to share some slides from my earlier keynote speech, which I think actually fit very well. I want everybody to step back rather than looking at bit by bit and looking at, okay, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strong points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weaker points or whatever. I want everybody to step back to think of this. What is the purpose of developing and promoting smart learning ecosystems? Yeah, so I hope everybody think in a meta level kind of thing. So that's why I think I want to navigate diverse research orientations in this area. Yeah, what are their respective goals? What happened here is that, okay, the next slide. Okay, so that's the part. My part one sharing will focus on unpacking this point. Technologies are smart not because they are capable of replacing human reasoning, but rather because they can help towards achieving a people-centered smartness. Yeah, that's relevant to what we're going to talk about in this part. Okay. So the question is about smartness of technology versus smartness of learners. So not the same type of smartness we're talking about actually. Yeah, so we can talk about this. So I want to refer to this particular publication by Chan Chen Cho. They are Taiwanese actually. 3 major types of education technology research. But I think we can also generalize it to any specific type of education research because back then they're talking about mobile learning. But we can generalize it to any type of edtech research, including smart learning environment. So they call it dream-based, adoption-based, and humanity-based loosely. Okay. So yeah, they can be generalized and recontextualized, or maybe they form a spectrum. They are not really dichotomous in a sense. So let's see what are them. Yeah, okay. Maybe they are not mutually exclusive in a sense. Yeah, so okay, dream-based is more dreaming the future. We try to push the boundary of technology. First of all, we see this new technology coming in, so we just try to apply it to education, adapt it, customize it for educational purpose. Yeah, so without thinking about what's the pedagogical underlying, we just let the rest of people worry about how we're going to bring it pedagogy into it. So that's what pushing the boundary of technology is more a technical point of view. So they developed previously a non-edtech from non-general technology. That's the point. So the second adoption-based, embracing the present. Maybe you want to see it that way, characterize it that way. Informed by established learning theories of pedagogies, adopt existing tools, because that's more from my perspective, because I'm from learning sciences background. I'm putting more focus on how learning theory can inform what you should do and what you shouldn't do, or what should you focus on. Consideration, maybe not all-rounder tools are available, then adopt a combination of tools. Yeah, not necessarily the same tool, one tool to do everything, one size fits all. And even derive novel ways of using off-the-shelf tools. It doesn't have to be always develop new tools. Yeah, okay. So humanity-based, they call it learner-oriented kind of research. This is more personalized learning, talk about, and also develop learners' dispositions and cognitive skills in lifelong autonomous learning, personal interests, values, and self-actualization in the long run. Eventually, we want to accomplish self-directed learning without maybe over-relying on technology. Yeah, so that's something we want to think about, because when I talk about smart learning environment, I always picture it as every student being surrounded by all types of high-tech. Yeah, it's kind of you are being absorbed into this big environment of technology. But can we actually step back, think harder what we should do? So now I want to borrow this concept originated from software engineering field, adaptivity versus adaptability. We see this. We take this example or this analogy, point and shoot automatic camera and professional camera. Okay, there's automatic adaptation by the system. Yeah, you just take a camera, you just point and shoot. You don't need to worry about you have zero photography skill. Doesn't matter. Yeah, they take care of everything for you. That's smart camera we're talking about. For a professional camera, afford user to kind of configure in the way they want, because they are highly skillful photographer. They can do this. So this is something that when we talk about, we are mapping to this smart learning environment. We want to go which direction? Yeah. Okay. So we call this who rules over the learner's destiny. We call it this way. Who determines learning objectives? Who determines learning pathways, learning strategies, and who determine learning resources? So we transform our children to become professional learners. We keep talking about we want to let the student learn how to learn. So we want students to be learned and adapt in how to learn. Yeah. Adaptivity overdoing is worse than underdoing. Why? Adaptivity is transforming teacher-centered learning not into student-centered learning, but into technology-driven learning. Yeah, let technology decide what you need to do, then you still don't need to learn how to learn, because our technology decide everything for you. Is it the direction we want to go? So from learner's point of view, from over-relying on teachers to over-relying on technology. Yeah, so of course, technology can make learning more personalized. Personalized learning doesn't equal autonomous learning, because you don't need to make decision by yourself. You let technology make decision, all the learning decision for you. Yeah, so this is an issue I want to raise. So we have to discourage technological laziness in our declaration. So we have different way of, because I didn't unpack what's meant by technological laziness, my perspective may be different from what's originally meant, but I think my perspective is probably still valid. Yeah, if relying on technology, that is a technological laziness in a sense. So I want to quote Marlene Scalamedia's words. She wrote this in 1989. Yeah, it's not the computer that should be doing the diagnosing, goal setting, and the planning. It's the student. The computer environment should not be providing the knowledge and intelligence to guide learning. It should be providing facilitating structure and tools that enable students to make maximum use of their own intelligence and knowledge. So of course, she made this point before smart learning environment becomes so smart nowadays. So now it becomes so smart, then what can we do? Where's the line we want to draw? Yeah, learners are over-relying on technology to drive their learning. It's probably not conducive for developing autonomous and lifelong learning in a sense. How about we take adaptivity? Because adaptivity means that human making this adaptation as a scaffold. Adaptivity, okay, sorry, the technology side as a scaffold. Technology to scaffold students, but like any type of scaffolding we talk about, it should gradually fade out. Yeah, so rather than it's always scaffold, always let's decide everything for students don't need to think. Yeah, just learn. Okay. There's no need to get rid of adaptability, just fade out. Yeah, okay. So I try to balance between adaptability and adaptability. I think that's what I hope that all the smart learning environment researchers and developers in part. Extending the meaning of adaptability beyond the adaptability of system in technological sense, we want to talk about adaptability of learning experience in and out of technological support. Not always being driven or mediated by technology. We can be in and out of learning experience. Technology support in the learning experience. Yeah, we want to think this way. And technology to enhance and augment your ability to learn rather than replacing your ability to learn. Yeah, we want to recall the boundary between human learners and technology. So let them form their intellectual partnership. And where's the boundary we want to think about? Yeah, we are lost. Where's the boundary? We need to redraw the boundary, and where's the boundary? We want to think about this. So I think this is about the next part. I'm going to talk about two more key challenges I'm foreseeing. Yeah, so I will leave it to the next speaker before we come back to part two. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Your audio was not always fine, at least for me, but your slides helped a lot. So it was a good idea to have them. Thank you very much. So last contribution is from Beverly. So Beverly, I will leave the floor to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I am Beverly Woolf from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, Mass. So I'm going to talk at detail level about the declaration, which is what I thought our assignment was. I also would like to say that as a person from the United States, I'd be very happy to have us included, the United States, so that this does represent much more of the world than Europe. So I say the declaration provides basic, strong tenets and ideas and innovative statements, and I think it's quite impressive. And I list some of the declarations that I like: define new roles, address new formal, etc., which a lot of people have talked about. So I think it is pretty strong. However, I think there's a lot of statements in there that are self-evident, redundant, and obvious and thin, and I'll talk about them later. But for instance, Declaration 13 says we will sustain the training of teachers, professionals, and educators. We did that, for 200 years, and without any substantive details and ideas about the technology that we're talking about or the ecosystem we're talking about. It's not clear what that Declaration 13 means, but I'll give it in the part 2. I will talk about what I think it should say. And Declaration 14 is also ambiguous. Provide pedagogically inspired frameworks and support the acquisition of digital skills. That doesn't mean anything unless there are details supporting it. Why isn't teaching people to memorize math facts just the same as digital skills and literacy? So plus the digital skills, digital literacy was never defined. So that's a problem. And I think we need, it says analytic tools that interoperable, yeah, but software's been saying that for 30 years, easy to use, but there's no examples given. So also, I think the declaration should start with a motivation. What is wrong? Why can't we keep teaching for the next 20 years the way we've taught for the last 40 years? And I'd say things like that we have to have a portion of the declaration that says children have an inalienable right to learn or to have well-developed social and emotional skills, that the workforce, meaning industry and academia and government, needs prepared students, and we don't have them now. You know, this is never actually stated, it's alluded to, all these things are alluded to. And that right now, the current ecosystem is focused on academics. You know, you spend about 8 hours and you learn to memorize facts, and you learn to repeat them. But who's been helping you with your social skills? And kids need emotional kaleidoscope, which is a term used, so they can grow as social beings. It is not stated that that's what's missing now. And also the declaration never says, how are we going to teach social skills? I mean, this is a huge area. And how do you move from academic skills to social and behavioral skills and try to avoid bullying and difficult things that are going on in classrooms? And how do you alter the existing form of learning? So we need ways to dictate that these long established methods and strategies need to be changed. And I think that should be stated up front, and that the community needs to establish ways for creating more effective, efficient, and creative learning, etc. And then there are elements in the present ecosystem that do not work, and that's not stated, again, it's alluded to, that the physical space of brick and mortar no longer provides the environment for smart learning. Why? Someone might say, why can't we keep the same bricks and mortar and teach smart ecosystems and smart learning? It's never stated that that has to go. And the current conditions do not provide the opportunity for smart learning. And what you need, for instance, is flexibility, variety, and energy. You know, kids who are sitting in the same position for 5 or 6 hours are probably not learning about the smart ecosystem and about new methods. And they're not learning new technology and strategies. And, you know, what contributes to that and what can we do about that? And then there's the larger societal needs about how rapidly society is changing. And actually, there have been studies that show that people's reasoning ability from, say, the First World War, the Second World War until today are changing dramatically. And this is even a part, this is just looking at people who are in society. So they actually measured in one country, I think it was China, people who are in remote areas and who are not connected to society with people who are society, and their IQ has changed dramatically in the last 40 years, just from being involved in society. And so we have to know what replaces the physical spaces to support that. And how can socialization be supported? This is very important. I think without giving some hints about social and behavioral learning, we're not addressing the problem. And then there's almost nothing in the entire declaration about technology besides the fact that technology will help. How will it help? How will it help students' social and emotional being, etc. And again, in the second phase, I will give a few hints to this. Then this idea of design literacy, it's all wonderful, but you know what? It was never defined. In the declaration, it says that design literacy should assume a leading role and manage computer processes aimed at achieving clearly creative problem solving inspired by in-depth something or other. But the definition isn't actually there. So to me, the definition should include the ability to understand and discuss how anything is designed. It should discuss what makes any item good or bad. And students who have design literacy should have skills in inquiry and ideation and prototype evaluation. And they should be transparent and communicate with different teams. And then I guess design literacy also includes an awareness of the quality and the design of artifacts and solutions. And it's a key issue for developing a sustainable society, is the choices when it touches almost all of objects and consumerism. And it involves decision makers, investors, consumers, all the people who make choices about items as they get developed, and they all influence our future environment. And it's the general ability to understand and discuss how everything is created. So I found, design literacy from the artistic graphic viewpoint is much different from the design literacy that I think is being referred to in the declaration. So I think that has to be honed. And just my last comment is the word digital, which doesn't have a definition either. And this word was created in 2013. That is, it's made up by academics just like us. So if it's a made up word, it clearly should be defined. A seamless blending of the physical and the digital. And whether it's relevant or not, I don't know, because since it was just made up, it has got a lot of usage at this point. And that's it for me, except to say that I think it's an exciting project, and I certainly would like to take part further in its development. And it's definitely needed. There needs to be a time and a place at which we say, okay, the following things are not working for education, and we are proposing as we go forward that we have this kind of ecosystem that we teach social and emotional learning, and that we think that the brick schoolhouse is probably finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beverly. Really interesting. So this was the first round. So our panelists helped us to detect the strong points and weaknesses of the present declaration. So for the second round, we have asked them to look more at the future and to provide their vision of the new opportunities that they see, the challenges that they see, and so the direction that they would suggest or they would like to see suggested in the declaration. So I would start again from Blazenka, if this is okay, and do the same round. So Blazenka, the first is yours. 10 minutes again for each of you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm mindful of time to give our also participants to opportunity to ask questions. And I just have this one slide here. Actually, yeah, I've been really thinking all the time when you were talking about your visions, not directly a vision, because this first part wasn't about the vision, but actually we can feel, all of us, that what we would like to have for the next period in education is learning as a joyful social process. So I think that whenever Lung-Hsiang Wong said that it is overdoing is worse than underdoing, and or when Beverly asked what does it mean to give support for learners in a way to fulfill their full capacity, or when Maria talked about that we have different perspectives when we analyze the situation where we are right now. I think that all of us would like to emphasize this learning as a joyful social process that should be supported somehow by new technology, by artificial intelligence, but also that we at least in this learning outcome space should find these learning outcomes that are meaningful. So it is, and how to actually build the schools to serve as hubs for community learning, but also co-creation. So not just packed young people or students and pupils in classes in a 19th century type of teaching and learning, but how to actually succeed in a way that we have this learning as a social process. So more inquiry-based learning, more projects, more volunteering, more interactions with outside world, because the outside world, it's not anymore just physical world outside of the school, but also virtual reality as well, which is actually for young people sometimes more real than physical environment. So this school for life is something that we should really be very keen on having in mind learning outcomes, but at the same time that this is the joyful social process of learning. And then Of course, for that, we should have competent teachers as cornerstones. And we should be very clear and make a decision right now that human cannot be replaced by machine in any aspect of decision making and supporting. Because nowadays there are a lot of discussion about AI-based universities, like universities without teachers. But of course, we can imagine universities without teachers. Hardly, but we can. But just imagining schools without real teachers, or with less teachers, with a less human touch and support, I think it would be a disaster for us. And then for that, we should be also aware not just about retraining of teachers and giving them support in a way to understand, for example, how this chatbot actually decide what to answer, how we are actually going to decide which students need support, what are the students in risk, but also how actually they should give feedback to students in a more with this empathy, and also to give advice, and that students have a secure space where they can develop. And then, of course, it means that we should really rethink the initial education of teachers that is all around the globe. I think the big question. And for higher education teacher, just to emphasize here, something that we've been talking about for a long time, but teaching skills for higher education teachers are somewhere in the corner, usually, if you compare with, for example, research skills or something like that. And then, of course, these literacies should be a very practical guidelines format, how to recognize and not use biased algorithms and AI outputs, because there are a lot of, even nowadays, tendencies that AI are used in a way that are not learner-centric, or how to prepare learning design which are flexible, so individualized whenever we can support, and we can with technology much easier than motivating and informed by learning analytics. And this informed decision-making, not just about students and their progress and supporting, but also about the whole systems, and on a global level, it is something that we are not talking about that on a political sphere good enough, I would say. And then finally, it is about talents, because talents are not distributed evenly, but opportunities are not. Maria Mercedes actually said that, and also some others pointed out that even this declaration is European-centric. But even in European Union, we experience this brain drain, brain gain game in a way that it is for certain parts of Europe so devastating, because the talents actually are attracted to go to a richer hubs, richer countries, and so on. And for the European Union, it's, I would say, a really big danger for, we should think about more clearly. And this game, so search and attracting talents on a global level, also have caused a lot of migrations, and also conditions that are not in favor of young people, and especially children in certain parts of the world. So it's not just some kind of historic reasons, but our doings nowadays. And with the support of technology, it can be even worse. So this kind of, I would say, even neo-imperialism and domination of big industry players is also something we should think about, not just governments and political level, but also big industry, because new technology, and especially this influential AI technology algorithms, are also very, very strong players, and not always in favor of young people and learners. And just imagine what does it mean for small languages, for example. Yeah, nowadays we also now at this panel we also use English language as some kind of a language that we understand, even though some of us are not so let's say very well understood in English as English native speakers. But at the same time, we should be aware of that, because with the new technology and new development, all these threats and all these dangers should be, we will be even worse, and this kind of challenges should be taken into consideration. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Blazenka. Yes, but that's interesting. That's right. I mean, we are speaking English all the time, but somehow this does have risks. Yeah, I totally agree with you. So let's give the floor to Maria Mercedes for the second round.
Thank you. I was interested in what Blazenka said about how talent is distributed, but opportunities are not. I mean, that I really had to kind of, I think I stopped listening after she said that, because I really had to think about it. So if I missed the rest of your talk, I'm so sorry, but you had me quite, that was kind of turning around in my head after you said it. Okay, because it actually leads a little bit into what I wanted to say. What the situation that I find myself in is that we here would really love to collaborate with researchers from the US, from Europe, from other countries who are much more advanced. And if there was a way to, I'm always looking for opportunities to do research together, to develop systems together. I have a great interest in things like cultural sensitivity, but it's also interesting to know whether there's a way to develop these technologies such that they can be deployed even in contexts where we're not that developed, we're not that advanced or well resourced. In my country, there are classrooms sometimes that are packed with as many as 90 students, and there's only one teacher that's assigned to them. And this is true especially in impoverished areas or resource poor areas, areas that are far flung, or in provincial areas. And it's very common that facilities are inadequate, there aren't enough classrooms. And really, when the other thing that you said, which also had me thinking quite a lot, is that we should decide that AI should not replace human beings. But I wonder, really, why not? In our just because in my context, I can see how that would be advantageous. Maybe replace is too strong a word, but can we use AI to augment for example, the teaching force that we have? Because when you have a situation where teachers are such a rare commodity, we have to kind of extend what it is that they're capable of doing. So it's not, I mean, like I find myself really thinking and wishing that we could deploy more of these conversational tutors that are based on things like ChatGPT and so on, so that we can, and then of course that they would be built on local knowledge, so that they can actually help teachers facilitate and support, facilitate student interactions and support students as well. So I actually think that AI-based tutors would be very helpful in our contexts. Now, the challenges that I see, with the challenges confronting us as we try to address these new opportunities, is that working with someone like me, working with someone from a developed country is actually, well, I'm going to use the word difficult, just because there's an asymmetry between researchers here and researchers in more developed contexts. the research costs in your countries are much higher than our research costs. So the same amount of money in dollars or euros goes much further where I am than it does. So it buys a few hours in your case, but it can actually pay for like 1 or 2 research assistants full time for a month in my case. So and also the expectations from things like funders are very different because they recognize those asymmetries. Also, when it comes to another way to collaborate is with industry, but what I find locally here is that industry generally looks upon us as markets, not as sources for innovation, but rather a, 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 a community to sell products to. So I understand again where that's coming from, because I think we also lack a certain amount of critical mass to contribute substantially to like groundbreaking R&D work. But I really wish that countries, that companies, industries can be creative about using or finding ways to involve us. It's it is a great source of frustration for me sometimes when we approach well, I'm just checking the time. Okay, I have time for one brief story. A long time ago, we were approached, the university where I'm working was approached by a very large tech company, which will not be named. And they were very excited about basically selling us computers. And so we were, when we said that, well, isn't there anything we can do together, that will actually be more creative and innovative, and basically the short answer was no, because the person we were talking to was basically a salesman. And I've seen this drama play out several times over the years. Most recently with, okay, I guess I shouldn't mention the name, but with another, let's say, supplier of MOOCs, which, and it was really quite, again, frustrating. So yeah, I don't think we're looked upon as possible resources to contribute creatively or innovatively. We're looked upon as people with money to buy products, and that's, yeah, so that also doesn't help create that kind of ecosystem that would be so I think it's kind of a vicious cycle. There aren't enough opportunities for R&D, and therefore not enough people want to be in R&D or study to be in R&D, and so on and so forth. Okay, this is all I have, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Mercedes, for providing this perspective, which takes very much into account your region, your country. This is very interesting, I think. So I can give the floor to Beverly and then come back to you. Is this okay?
All right. So the detail and examples, the abilities and affordances need to be discussed, as which I talked about. And the teachers will not be displaced. I've always said that. However, now Didith in the Philippines would like to displace, well, she says she does not have enough. So I'm happy to have teachers and machines in developing countries. And by the way, here's a plug. Didith is a great collaborator. She had a fine project at UMass in the United States. Her graduate students are very strong, and they worked with us for years afterwards. So yes, please collaborate with it. And I'm, okay, so we'll go back to, will AIs ever become teachers? Yes and no. Will they augment teachers? Absolutely. And in any case, smart computers need to interact with human teachers every day, and they need to inspire the next generation of researchers. So AI will be the oft overlooked magical force that powers the students' lives, much as electricity and internal combustion and networking technology empowers ours, and we don't even think about it anymore. And that's how AI will be. It will be in the background. Let me just go back. I just want to talk, someone mentioned about digital laziness and to avoid Chat GPT. And I know that was in the context of having students use ChatGPT to produce their own essays. But we are starting to use ChatGPT to produce new problems, given a whole dialogue of the content of problems, that the ChatGPT could produce problems and teachers evaluate those problems equally to problems that have been generated by teachers. So you can generate new quizzes. You can also generate hints using ChatGPT. So we can't just let these innovations go by. We have to think about how they're used in education. Now, I told you I would try to fill in some of the detail. Here's some. The declaration number 10 said learning ecosystems should sustain the acquisition of relevant literacies. So I'm thinking we have to actually talk about in the declaration how that will be done, how computers perceive the world using sensors, not in detail so that someone will map it out, but to ensure that we all understand that you have to put in knowledge and you have to put in data, and that the abilities of computers to see and hear well enough to be practically useful is one of the most significant achievements of AI. And people should understand that machine perception of spoken language or visual imagery requires extensive domain knowledge. So there needs to be, if we're going to have learning ecosystems interact with humans, we have to say something about how that interaction is achieved. And then there's a statement about design literacy, and I've been talking to Carlo offline about that it should support achieving clearly defined goals and creative problem solving. But how do you do that again? We need intelligent agents to better understand humans, and then an agent will be able to work as a home healthcare aid for the elderly. And they can enable massive government surveillance. So that's evil, and we have to look out for that and loss of privacy. But many people will work alongside these assistants or autonomous robots. And, we have to look at the positive and the negative, massive unemployment, et cetera. And the economic impact will include increased productivity and new types of services and new career opportunities, but also possibly massive unemployment and a shift of the kind of workers. And cultural impacts include living with intelligent assistants. And we might describe that. What does it look like in a smart ecosystem to have a bunch of robots around or intelligent assistants? Where will they be? I mean, we don't have to state it explicitly, but we have to, in the declaration, say we are open to this and it's time to consider this. Of course, we have to talk about ethics and need to address transparency and fairness, accessibility and ethics. And just to define one, transparency would provide justification for inclusion so that reasoning can be checked and wrong assumptions identified. Ethical considerations means we look at the databases, and if there's a possibility of bias due to race or gender or age or disability, that we handle that in the smart ecosystem. And then number 13 said training of teachers to help literacy penetrate all learning ecosystems. So I'm thinking we have to talk a little bit about natural interactions, and that understanding people is a hard problem for AI, but that we need agents in this smart ecosystem that interact comfortably with humans, and we have to ensure that humans are never hurt coding with computers. This would include natural language, a machine recognizing emotional status and inferring intention. I think a declaration can say these things because it's very clear that AI is on the path to achieving these things. And graceful interaction with humans is especially important for robotic agents that will share our living and working space. And we may want a robotic assistant to stay close so it's always ready to help, but it shouldn't stick to us too closely. And inferring a person's future intention is challenging, even for humans, but robots are starting to infer, that is to predict how a human will behave based on looking at their facial expression and based on their previous emotions. And this is already being done, so we can talk about it. And then another example is the 16 said support the acquisition of digital skills. And apart from the fact that it wasn't defined, we have to understand how humans and machines differ. And to support digital skills, we need to represent these digital skills. So we have to know what they are and what digital literacy is, and put it into the computer and enhance representation using data and using algorithms, etc. Okay. And maybe this is the last one. So I looked at Declaration 20, which says the availability of huge quantity of data requires the spread of new culture of evaluation and assessment. That does not say a lot about data. And so I think that you have to state that computers need data, they learn from data. But we have to ensure that the databases for the smart ecosystem have rich representation and are not limited by race, culture, gender, age, and that the database itself is not biased. Otherwise, that bias is thus passed on to the algorithm and then to the agent. So tremendous amounts of data are needed. For instance, open image data set, which is a bunch of photos of faces, contains 9 million training images and 30 million labels. And those are the numbers that you need for machine learning. So we have to be careful if we're talking about, say, pictures of children learning mathematics. How many pictures do we need? And et cetera, or learning humanities. And what does it look like if a child is doing well, is actually engaged in this humanities essay, or is lurking off and has no interest and is really trying to get away? Can we get pictures like that? And is that going to support education? And care must be taken to avoid introducing bias. We need to ensure that the database for learning have rich representation, et cetera. I said that already. And so these are all go into the machine learning algorithms that support computers to create their own representation, which is a machine learning system today can learn on its own and not be entirely programmed. So that's about it. So in other words, there are lots of places where we can put in more definite material, some examples and some statements about how we're going to build these systems, or, without saying we absolutely have to build them in this way. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beverly, for this very detailed feedback. I think they are very useful. So I don't know if Jung has.
So I'm talking about two more key challenges, two more gaps I see in this in this declaration. It may be actually it belongs to the first part of this presentation, but I also see these two gaps, as the visions, that actually relevant to the vision of looking at this. So let's see what happened here. The first point, building on the points, declaration number 35 and 37 on page 7. So these are a few points. To be aware that only a few advanced learning ecosystems are ready to adopt the latest and most fashionable technologies. So efforts to produce technologies that are easy to use, adaptable by all. So these are the points. But it's more than designing for simplicity. Looking at this, you're only talking about simplicity technically, but something else, affordability. So this is a point that I want to echo what Mariam Mercedes raised. Actually unpack her point. Okay, so the desired ultimate outcomes or the vision of R&D in SLE is to diffuse and benefit learners and learning facilitators. I use the umbrella term of learning facilitators. It could be teachers, instructors, professors, lecturers, trainers, whoever. All over the world. So the question here is equal opportunities for all, regardless of race, religion, gender, sexuality, age, or social background. So that's another declaration point. But then we see what happened. Okay. But high product cost. Just want to talk about those dream-based research. So we try to push a boundary of technology, and then we use most costly technology to build this. And then not only the cost itself of developing the products when you productize it, but also the cost of maintaining it to sustain the use of it. Is it actually widening the educational digital gap? So how about equal opportunities for all, regardless of financial status? So we want to think hard. So this is a major gap. I don't see it in the declaration, not addressed in the declaration. So of course, we are not talking about want to slow down our pace in order to achieve this kind of a reduction of digital gaps, because there are some we couldn't catch up. So we just we move slower so that they can catch up. No, we help them to catch up instead. So this is probably beyond what we can do as technologists, as researchers, but we need to think how we actually can bring together all these government or societal kind of of these resources to help them. Yeah, and also to build technologies which are not necessarily costly, yeah, and sustainable. So we need to think hard on this point. Yeah. So, okay. Also another point is literacy here, literacy there. We see points 11, 43 to 46 and 49. So just now, a few of us, my fellow panelists, they already unpack design literacy. Yeah, but there's also more than that. We also mentioned in the declaration, digital literacy, data literacy, evaluation literacy elsewhere. But we're also missing points. Information and new media literacy, relevant. It's quite relevant to SLE as well. And also AI literacy. Yeah, and also privacy literacy. And our focus in the declaration when we're talking about this literacy, we're talking about students, from students, learners' point of view. So we want learners to learn this. Yeah, maybe some of these are actually both means and ends to use when you're using this smart learning environment, because these are the means, because the students need to have a basic digital literacy, design literacy, data literacy, and evaluation literacy. Yeah, to use, to make good use, to draw the best out of a similar this smart learning environment. But there's also make it as an end. It means that they can also improve their literacies through the use of a smart learning environment. But all these were focusing on students. How about teachers? These are important not only for learners, but also for learning facilitators. There's only one or two declaration points, yeah, which are talking about teachers only need to pick up design literacy as well. It's more for because they need to design these pedagogical approaches surrounding this technology. Yeah, but they didn't actually. Didn't actually move it further down. I think this is also equally important. Yeah, so when we're building a big smart learning ecosystems, we need to provide PDs to the teachers, to the instructors. Yeah, so they need to pick up digital literacy, design literacy, data literacy, and evaluation literacy. I think this is a gap that we need to address, yeah, deeper in our declaration. Yeah, because they are the people who actually make all this happening. Yeah, okay, so the RPD matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this contribution. We have formally finished the panelist rounds, but in the meanwhile, I have received, let's say, a contribution to this last round by Carlo Giovannella by chat. He conveyed to me by chat, and I would like to read it. It's given that he's somehow the father of the declaration, I think it is worthwhile reading this contribution, and then I will leave the floor to the discussion with the audience. So Carlo says, apart from the need to overcome the school factory model that waits to the industrial revolution and thus to switch to competencies-based learning processes with integration of scientific literacy and design literacy, including life skills, supported by digital literacy and basic literacy, I'd like to point out that the main keyword for the future should be responsibility. That is, responsibility of the society towards learning ecosystem, social responsibility of learning ecosystem actors towards responsible and ethical use of all resources, recover of and at large civil responsibility. Of course, responsibility needs to monitor the level of smartness and well-being of learning ecosystems together with its immaturity, not only to measure the impact, but also as means to foster and sustain co-design for improvements. And this needs robust monitoring and evaluation frameworks. So this was the contribution by Carlo. Thank you, Carlo. So I think this contribution can open the discussion. So I don't know if there is any question from the audience, either to specific panelists or more general question or contribution that you would like to share. So please go ahead.
My name is Jessie. I use she, her pronouns, and I want to thank again the panel and the moderator. That was absolutely fascinating, and I really do appreciate each of your perspectives. One thing that comes to mind for myself when thinking about this, I like accountability, but something else that I think could be included a little more intentionally is the concept of accessibility, to be very explicit in how we are trying to reach out to every person, especially in my line of work. The way I describe it is that every person is one accident or one diagnosis away from becoming disabled, immunocompromised, or chronically ill. And in that event, we need to make sure to have a secure safety net, not just for the people who currently need it, but for those in the future who are going to need it. And especially as we pointed out that the COVID pandemic was a crisis point, I say still is a crisis point for many people who are immunocompromised. And in light of the evidence that is mounting up, that people, 1 in 10 infections creates long COVID, that will mean that we have an exponentially increasing number of people who are going to need some form of connectivity to education, widening of access of resources, and making sure that they're not being left behind. So it's just some thoughts I had and wanted to interject them, and also to say, even though I'm speaking with an imperialistic US accent, I was raised around the world, and I also agree with Didith that we need to be expanding partnerships and also the terminology that we're using and the language that we're using in discussing these commonalities and these agreements. I think it would be incredibly powerful if this agreement could be translated into as many languages as there are people working to create the agreement in English. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have detected several, as far as I have understand from the various contributions, there were a lot of points of contact among the contributions, because some keywords were repeated by the different panelists. For sure, I have captured an invitation to try to make the declaration less ambiguous, let's say, more precise, probably with definitions that can help making it more less vague, let's say. So and I would say I agree with this. Something that, for example, captured my attention, and is something that was somehow mentioned by all the panelists, has to do with, let's say, costs, okay, and money, which is something that is not explicitly mentioned in the declaration, but is probably worth being more directly addressed. So I don't know if, Didith for sure mention it very clearly from her own perspective. I don't know if the others want to make an additional comment about this in order to help us to improve the declaration towards this direction. Because, for example, I remember Blazenka also mentioned business models that are changing, but probably not in the right directions, so I don't know if you have any additional comment about this specific aspect, it would be welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, please, Beverly. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I see it as the job of the governments, the various governments, to focus on this and to be giving grants to people who do research. The research at this level cannot be done by an individual university or professor, and it should not possibly be sponsored by industry, because as Didith remarked, they're going to be out after their market. You know, if you're not producing something for their market, say a training implement for some industry, I'm not sure they're interested in. And it is usually the government that's involved in K-12 and higher ed. So we have to work harder to convince our policymakers that it is in their best interest to now change the model of education, which, as we've stated, has been around for 50 years, 80 years. And that we cannot move to the next level without a different model of, you know, the brick house, the chairs that kids sit in for 5 hours a day, the lecture style, all the things that are sort of understood by our community, I think have to be taught to the policymakers. So in terms of money, it has to come from the government, or if you have a rich uncle, you know, that works too. But we need to work on the policymakers.
Thank you, Beverly.
As a reaction to that, Beverly, I'd be concerned potentially about allocation of resources if we are trying to rely on individual governments, if this isn't a collective funding pool, because as we pointed out, not every country has the same access to financial resources. It's not always allocated in the way that you know, could be even agreed upon by every person on this panel and in this room. So I always encourage or try and find a way for introducing more of a communist kind of communal pool of funding to be shared equally between anyone who is trying and attempting to implement this agreement in their spheres.
Yeah, so I want to mention that the United States NSF has many collaborative agreements whereby the government of another nation must also put up money. And so the United States NSF will put up money for the research in the United States, and the government of Croatia, for instance, will put up money for a contract with somebody in Croatia. And then the two would be linked together. And in that way, perhaps we can influence the governments in a more collaborative way, as you're suggesting. But I think we have to go look for those kind of collaborative agreements.
And maybe just to add that it's very important that we are not putting any national boundaries and in the declaration, because you're right that we should think about the global, have a global perspective. Otherwise, we are again in this brain gain game, because governments usually and politicians in general very keen on solving some problems immediately. So it means that to attract talents to US, to Europe, to, I don't know, Japan, Singapore, to actually help the industry, help the society, help the, you know, retirement funds, whatever, and then at the end of the day, so they are contributing to the even bigger tensions on a international global level, and then actually affordability and equal opportunities are even in a worse position around the globe. So I think that we should be aware of these mechanisms that we nowadays have and that are not working on a global level in favor of young people and equal opportunities. And so I think it is very important to address that on some international level. But starting with some sort of resources that are available is always good. As Beverly said that.
But I think the point I'm trying to make just now was that although whatever you said was valid, that we need to convince the government to fork out the money. But I think for certain countries, we know the third world countries, I think they can only afford to give the kind of to provide basic education for everybody, and that's the best they can do. They only have that budget. So I think we still can, as researchers, as developers, we can still play our part to develop affordable technology. Not always chasing for those very costly for production and very costly for sustain and maintain for those kind of. So it means that even if we develop a very high-level technology, we can still develop maybe a affordable version. Maybe scale down a little bit, but still something that we can make it more attractive for other governments. Yeah, for those who have financial constraint to purchase. Otherwise, we say, okay, if you buy this kind of most costly technology you develop, maybe only go for those elite schools in this particular countries, and the rest of those schools, especially those in rural areas, they still using their original old things they can do. So I think it's something that we can still play a part.
Yeah. And I wonder if in a place like the Philippines, 90 children in one room, my God, clearly it has to be less expensive to bring in computers. Am I right? Or maybe not. I mean, the AI component, the software development, once it was developed somewhere, could be used in the Philippines. But of course, getting the computers in the classroom is a story. But if the government cannot afford to bring out teachers in the rural areas, can anyone make the argument that it would be cheaper to get the computers in those classrooms?
There are programs to equip classrooms with computers. I think what is lacking are things like internet access is one, but other than that, taking a step forward a bit, it's really the software. So having it, if they could get, I think getting the computers and the internet in are probably the most basic things that the government is trying to do already. But really the challenge is once you have the equipment, then what is the content now that you will be using the computers for?
Okay, but you understand that there is no added cost. Once, let's say, a good tutor for mathematics is invented, Brazil or wherever, supposedly, if it's for free, people in the Philippines can use it. So there's no additional cost once it's developed. So we need to get over the hump that we're in now, where there's not a lot of systems out there, they're not a lot available for free. And once that we're in that steady state phase, I think it will go much faster in developing countries.
Okay, so thank you also for this last exchange on this issue. I guess we are, almost in time. So unless there are other comments, I would like to close this debate. Let me thank the panelists a lot for devoting their time to preparing their interventions for today, and also for contributing and providing us with so many feedback and inputs for the declaration. Let me thank also Gabriella Dodero for helping me and Carlo in the organization of this debate. And also I would like to give a last thank to the YALDE Association, which was the channel through which I approached our panelists. So without YALDE Association, we couldn't have made this interesting debate. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much, and enjoy your evening.